If you're like me and you first start soldering and wanting to work on SMD, service mounted device components, and work on boards, oftentimes you start like I did and you buy a bunch of these little practice boards. These are just boards that have empty pads and a bunch of components. And I bought these from AliExpress, I believe. They were very, very inexpensive. They came with all the components. And for most of the boards, the components were exactly what was advertised. um, the instructions were all in Chinese. I had no idea exactly what I was supposed to do. Occasionally, I would find a picture of somebody who had completed a board, and that's kind of how I knew things like what values of resistors go where. But this board was one of the first ones I had ever worked on, and I did a lot of experimentation. I started with soldering with just a soldering iron. I tried to use just flux and hot air. I tried to use I'm sorry, like a solder paste that has flux mixed in with hot air. And I tried to use solder paste with flux mixed in with a soldering iron. And I just tried a lot of different things. I tried to use a heating plate to kind of see what would that would mean when I would do soldering. And there was a lot of trial and error. Things I discovered that solder paste is messy unless you are putting it directly on the pads. It leaves a lot of little solder balls in places. And in particular, hot air, if it's hot enough, we'll do things like this. It'll start burning the board. It'll discolor it. And this particular board has a bunch of LEDs on it. And I don't know if you know this. I didn't when I started. LEDs can't handle 350 degrees Celsius. They will eventually melt. They'll stop working entirely. Also, these little surface-mounted LEDs are uh, they're not non-polar. They're polar. There is an anode and a cathode. There's a positive and a negative. They have to be put in place in the right order, the right orientation, in order to light up. And furthermore, a board like this sometimes it'll have two little points here. This is not just test points. There are these little points here, and these are just kind of test points to make certain there's continuity, to make certain you've done a good job soldering. But occasionally you get something like this, and this is to test out not only continuity, but with the chips and everything else to see if something works. When I first used this board, it did not work. And then eventually I got it to where some of the LEDs worked, and that's because some of them were fried, some of them were in the wrong orientation, about half of them lit up. So this board, and in fact, I'll show it under the microscope if you like, just to look at it, is sort of my redemption board. Last night, very late, I decided to remove all the LEDs that were either in the wrong orientation or just completely destroyed and replace them with some other LEDs. And now I'm going to inject some power and see what happens. All right. If you look at this board, there's some things that are very nice about it. You see the little R's that mean that some resistor goes here, D's for diodes or LEDs. Occasionally you'll see a C all in front of a box that is for a capacitor. The chips are pretty obvious where they go. You'll also see, if you look closely enough, things like this burnt section on the side. And that's what happens when the hot air is on too long. At one point, I wanted to clean things up, and I found that if you just add a lot of flux and a lot of hot air, a lot of the solder would flow very easily. Um, but for this board, what I've done is I've removed all the diodes that were broken, oriented, put the ones that were in the wrong orientation in the correct orientation, and this is what it looks like under the microscope. I have to say these things were super valuable for me to learn how to solder and what the different types of soldering methods would do for the board and how things would look. Okay, so here's the board, and I'm just going to inject some power into it. I've set my variable power supply to almost 3.7, 3.8 volts, and let's see what happens. Positive, positive, negative. All right, that's pretty awesome. It looks like every one of the LEDs is working. Yeah, that was a really fun project to do. If anyone is learning to solder and want to see how things are done, wants to experiment, this board I think was less than $5 with all the components from AliExpress, and yeah, highly recommended. So thanks for watching.